This land is my land.
There's no problem.
None of that happened. None of that in evidence. Where? The plot. Where is it? Is it in this room with us? Today we are serving sexy because nobody only Tiwa Savage get breast. Okay. We are professionals here. Okay, we are professionals here. Let's start over. Lovers of African cinema, this is the channel where we love African movies and we review these movies from a place of love and the desire for excellence in our industries. Welcome new and returning viewers. Please consider subscribing if you're not already subscribed. It's nice here, I promise. Welcome also to this review of Water and Garri. Water and Garri is a Tiwa Savage production, Everything Savage and Unbound Studios, produced for Prime Video where it's currently streaming. Guys, please do me a favor, like this video, seriously, do it now. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. This movie, Water and Garri, is written by Comfort Emmanuel and directed by Meji Alabi. Now, this director is predominantly a music video director. How that translates to film is usually hit or miss. Which is it here? I guess you could say a bit of both, but stick around and find out where I lean. For its synopsis, it says, the drama tells the story. I copied this verbatim, so let's do that again. Literally, this was copy and paste. The drama tells story of Aisha, an ambitious fashion designer, as she returns to her native home after 10 years in the US following a family bereavement. At home, things have changed, violence has escalated, and tensions have been high. Wow. We are going to really start reviewing synopsis. Anyway, oh, sorry, that was not the end though. Hey, Pearl. Jesus Christ. As she reconnects with family, old friends, and her past love, she must learn to live with her scars and confront the guilt she left behind. Jesus, I did such an abysmal job of that. First of all, let me just talk about the synopsis. You know what I like about synopsis? They tell you the intention and the ambition of the filmmaker as well as their assumption, which is what they think they've done. And then so when you're reading a synopsis, you're either nodding like, yeah, you really got that right, or you're shaking your head like, nope, you didn't do that. I know you thought you did, but you didn't. So we might circle back to this synopsis now. Water and Garri is filmed on location in Cape Coast in Ghana, and I'm the last person to ask why a Nigerian movie is not shot in Nigeria, because we all know how hard it is to make films in Nigeria. So as long as they continue to be unfortunate, our money will continue to go elsewhere. I have no problem with that. What worked? Let's just establish that this movie is shot beautifully. The cinematography is great. There are a lot of really commendable shots, great framing. This movie is beautiful, and that ties into production design, by the way. The location, the sets, the costume, makeup, all the art direction elements in this movie are amazing. They're beautiful, they're great. And then speaking specifically about costume, this is really important that the costume here was so wonderful, because the protagonist Aisha is a fashion designer, and so that tracks. So you could really say that this movie is aesthetically pleasing. Keep in mind sometimes that even griminess and grittiness can be beautiful, which we have a lot of that also in this movie. Even violence can be shot beautifully. Depending on how it's shot, anything is beautiful. We're talking about beautiful in the sense of filmmaking. This is shot, this entire movie, with specific emphasis and intention and dedication to beauty. And sometimes this beauty is really important, especially when a story is not giving and also not giving you much to do, but your eyes are being fed, you know, with what, because I mean, many times when we are watching this Mexican, Brazilian, whatever, we're not watching it for the plot. At some point, we're just watching it to see that Eduardo, you know, whatever. So, as long as your eyes are being fed, it's easier to swallow a bar without soup or drink Garri without sugar and rely on water to sweeten the Garri. I don't know how I'm going to do with this metaphor, but we're going to try our best. Speaking of eye candy and unmitigated beauty, the cast. This movie showcases so many really beautiful people. Tiwa Savage, she plays the lead Aisha. She is beautiful. Is the sky blue? Is water wet? Is snow? Tiwa Savage is beautiful. She's my girl crush. We have to keep checking. Of all the women in the music industry in Nigeria, I think the person that I've consistently had a crush on, girl crush, is Tiwa Savage. And so, yes, she's fantastic. Sorry, let's not say fantastic because that might stretch into the acting, which we don't want to do that. All right, bring yourself back online, Pearl. Andrew Yaw Bunting is hot as well, right? He's a really good-looking man. So, yes. Micah Folarin is right up there as well. You know, and then there's Jemima Osunde. Listen, eye candy galore, okay? That's what this movie is, but also very specifically dark-skinned eye candy. I love that. And not only is dark skin on display, you guys know I comment on this from time to time about, but they're also shot really beautifully. Let's move on. To conclude this section of what works, this movie has an art house type vibe going for it. As with most art house films, the plot might not be consistent, but if you identify it as art, which we did or I did or kind of had to stay with this, I guess it becomes significantly easier to swallow. And that neatly segues us into what did not work. Wow, I went through that section really quickly. Anyway, before we get to the next section, please a reminder to like, comment, subscribe, share, all the things that help me with YouTube algorithm so I can continue bringing you these videos. What did not work? This movie has no real identity, or shall we say it has the real identity crisis. Starting with the story starting with let's just say the film as a whole, it doesn't know quite what it is. You know, it doesn't know if it wants to be a music video, it doesn't know if it wants to be a movie, and then the location did not help as far as the identity of this movie. The location just worked against this movie. What is this place, this east side? What is it? Fine, you want to film in Ghana. I've already said I will fight for your right to film anywhere outside of Nigeria. Fantastic. But why turn it into this potpourri of identities? You know, why, for instance, don't Aisha and her brother have this accent that the rest of the people have? And so we have just this mixture of people with different identities, and that's fine, but there should have been some intentionality about world building, let's put it that way, so that it would feel grounded. Like, fine, you could say, this is a Yoruba community in London, you know what I mean, and nobody would question that. But instead, it just felt like all these different people were thrown together with no real thought to it, and then that just ended up being so super distracting. There's so much exposition in this movie, which I dislike as much as I dislike the narration, and specifically with Tiwa being the narrator. Once I saw this movie, that was the first thing I thought, like, I hope her dialogue is minimal. They just took it the other way around, and we're like, not only will she have actual dialogue, she will also have the one that's playing out in her head straight into your head. The title does not work on any level. And then the metaphor, God, this water and Garri metaphor was strained, and there was nothing to stretch to begin, you know, but then they just kept stretching. Let's start with this opening line. Water is to Garri as love is to pain. You know, at first I thought it was the other way around, as pain is to love, which to an extent would have made sense because I know what pain is to love, you know, but what is love to pain? So I feel like even the sentence construction is wrong. There was a chance for this to make sense if somebody had actually just sat down and asked a few questions like, let's take this apart. What exactly does this mean? Just on a grammatical level. My enemies. Yes. Continuing with the metaphor. So even when grandma tries to explain this metaphor, if anything, it makes it worse. What is funny, you know, is that there's actually a popular Garri metaphor that could have worked really beautifully for even the plot where there's one of this movie. You guys know that saying, I think it's something like they threw us inside river, abi they threw us inside water, abi they poured water on us, something like, but they did not know that we are Garri and we swore or we rose, something like that. That would actually make sense because, again, if they had rotated it and said what pain is to love, which in that case, if love, as they tried to say or whatever, is Garri, pain is then water. Sometimes pain really does help you grow, which was actually where this movie was going. That's literally this entire what it was saying, as was nicely summarized in the closing scene, you know, but they really just completely messed up with not really knowing how to use this metaphor. One thing that was consistent was this movie reminding us about Aisha's beauty every 20 minutes. I swear I'm not jealous, which is all well and good. Like, I want to hear Aisha is beautiful. Oh, Princess Aisha, you're so beautiful. It's great. It's nice. nice, we know. Until then, we remember that Aisha is the producer. And then it starts looking or feeling like somebody jerking off to your own reflection in the mirror. Pearl, don't be a hater. Speaking of distractions, her music as the soundtrack, not only was it very like clearly her music because her voice is pretty distinct, but also you hear very recent music, but then they're using it as the soundtrack in the scenes from 10 years ago when they're still kids. No, not when. Actually, much more than 10 years ago, because literally in the scene where she's still a little girl. Another distracting thing was the dialogue. Not only was it just really badly written dialogue, but also the delivery was so unconvincing. It just, gosh, I don't know. And that's where I talk about the directing. We've talked about just the shots, the framing, the staging, all of that stuff working hand in hand with incredible cinematography. But directing of actors is an entirely different thing. That's what I mean when I say hit or miss as far as when a music director does now direct a movie, because a movie is not vibes. Now you have to actually get emotion out of people. You have to get people to deliver lines convincingly. Even Aisha / Tiwa herself in the opening in that opening voiceover, the way I won't even say fragmented the sentence, it's more like the delivery and the wrong placement of the punctuation. I was like, I had to play that back again, like, no, she's saying that wrong. Didn't love that. And so I'm just going to say that as far as the directing of the actors, a lot of the actors, and I do mean every single one of them, but especially the older ones, because ironically enough, the actors who played the younger versions of the characters, they actually did better in comparison to the older versions. Now let's get to the story, or the lack of one as the case may be. The plot, where is it? Is it in this room with us? Plot, where are you? Where are you? Look, there's just no effort to actually tell a coherent story. I feel like that is a complete sentence and I don't even need to say anymore. Because if I want to go into specifics on how just absolutely nothing makes sense, we'll be here all day. Even just starting with the premise for why she came back, none of that made any sense. If you watch the movie, you already know how that just does not make sense on any level. Not the phone call itself, not her actions on returning, not her actual relationship with this cousin or somebody. Also, never mind. And so I'll say nothing is convincing, not even exposition about change. All the east side has changed. East side looks every bit like it did 10 years ago. The young thugs, they just grew up, that's all. That whole love story is all vibes and sexual chemistry. It's so shallow and hollow and feels like it's all leading up to the sex. They have less in common than they did 10 years ago. Let me tell you, this love story actually in the very beginning gave me, I wouldn't exactly say the ick, but a bit of like cringe. Sorry, things tend to move around. So, I'm so unprofessional today. So that love story from the very beginning, even that scene where it happened, where she started saying, let's go, it was the acting there was terrible. And the directing was no better. The framing, the way it just played out that was not a good scene at all. And then, he sees her. He sees her and they're like, and all that starts. And then from the very beginning, the way she has her hands splayed on his chest, I was like, I don't know. People don't stay frozen in time, That's a problem I always have whenever I see people who have been apart a really long time and immediately they make assumptions about who the other still is and where they've been. And 10 years, a lot. Aisha could have married somebody and had a baby in America, as you're looking at probably somebody's wife, He himself probably has a living girlfriend or something. You don't know what triggers people have picked up, but the general feel of this is like they stayed frozen in time, like they just picked up wherever they left off 10 years ago. It was just, I don't know, it didn't work for me. Then there's a huge reveal towards the end of the movie. Now, I guess objectively, you could say it's good. I saw it from a mile away, and unfortunately, it had the effect of just making me very anxious, because the longer it took to get to what I knew was coming, the surer I was that the ending would be rushed, because I'm looking at how much is left, and I'm like, there's no time to tie this up. Was I wrong? I wish I was. Now, the reveal, which was this whole, thing about the brother's death, ultimately, it does not matter. It doesn't matter to Aisha, because first, it didn't have much to do with her leaving when we found out that she was already going to leave anyway. So that whole whatever really undermined, I don't know. Are people really thinking about how they're constructing narratives? Why would you do that? It's such a simple thing. The exact opposite would have worked beautifully, which is, this land is my land. I love this place. I want to set up here. I have big dreams of having a fashion business here. I will put East Side on the map, do this. So do you see how powerful it is that somebody has dreams of staying, they're never going to leave, and then, you know, that immigrant poem, I can't remember the name of the writer right now, that says nobody leaves home unless home is the belly of a beast or home is the belly of a shark. It's a very powerful poem. I'm going to leave the link for you in the description, especially if you're an immigrant or a diasporan. That poem gives me goosebumps every time. So you understand that. So, I mean, people do leave like just cause they want to, you know, like I know that sometimes people just do, you know, because I don't know, they're privileged, they just want to, you know, just live in different parts, explore whatever. That's valid. But majority of people who live, especially a country that is so fraught on so many levels like Nigeria, home is the belly of the beast, home is the belly of the shark, home is the mouth of a gun, you know. So when you think about it in that way, it's like you're driven, Jesus, I'm giving myself goosebumps, it's like you're driven away from home. It's a much more powerful narrative than I've always wanted to go, and then my brother's death just kind of expedited the process. How did she even afford that anyway? Because they also made a big deal. Didn't I say I wasn't going to go into specifics? Let's carry on. And so it didn't matter, you know, because she was always going to leave. And then in the present, it also doesn't matter because she doesn't have any unresolved questions about the story she was told about how her brother died, you know, so it's not relevant in the present even. And then it also does not matter in the plot because Kenan, who did the deed, he has no conflict pursuing Aisha despite what he knows that he's done. You know what I mean? So since he has, his guilt would have been, this character, we care about him, this is made a mistake, this is his dark night of the soul. So he has this crisis of choice. Is it very evil of me to go after a girl that I know that I was responsible for her brother, to confess or not to confess? None of that happened. None of that in evidence. Where? Nowhere. He was just, has absolutely no conscience, just going after her like nothing happened. So again, completely irrelevant to the plot. And then in the end, Aisha never finds out. I keep wanting to say Aisha because one of my best friends is Aisha. Aisha never finds out the truth, you know. And so the biggest reveal of the movie happens on the protagonist's blind side. I've never seen a plot point have so much made about it only to be so narratively unimportant. Furthermore, her brother's death is positioned as, you know, resulting from the high crime rates that the movie keeps referencing. But then this reveal undermines it because it turns out it was just between friends that led to his death. So waiting can be the crime again. I don't know. The resolution, again, starting with that reveal and then culminating in Aisha's equanimity.
I mean, of course, Kay's death was a complete shock, but I knew I would somehow be okay.
That whole thing is very infuriating. Like, when I heard all of that, you know, first of all, I knew it was going to be something like that because again, we're looking at the time bar and we're like, this movie is over. 5 minutes now, and I won't do this kind of big reveal. It's over. So I knew that it was going to be something like this, and but even then I still hoped, you know, hope springs eternal. And then when it happened, I just knew that I had wasted 81 minutes of my time.
In a weird way, I'm learning to make peace with the hard times, to live with the scars, as Kay would say. And maybe there's some beauty in the pain even.
I mean, again, the movie was still sexy, so maybe not exactly a waste of time, but
I don't know how much longer I'm gonna stay in East Side, but I'm glad I made it home.
That's the very definition of a rushed ending with a bow on top and happy vibes. Everybody dies. I'm worse off than when I arrived. I've clocked one more notch of death to my belt. But hey, I girl bust grief. This ending is just completely unearned. So in conclusion, this movie could have just gone ahead and been a music video and we would not have been mad. It's not boring. I've got to keep emphasizing that because again, it was so sexy and good to look at. I'm sorry, I'm being a complete nuisance today. But there's no coherent storytelling or cohesiveness between any aspects of the filmmaking. Even the parts that work are just standing very like independent and just distinct from each other. I mean, for Garri to work, my guys, the water, Garri, and sugar or salt, depending on your taste, they do have to mix, okay? On the other hand, it can be eba. It can be like eba that is hard as rock and then it becomes ultimately hard to swallow. But that's how my dad likes his eba. So I guess you could say it also works as a metaphor. And the worst thing for me of all is that this movie squanders an opportunity to tell a genuine story of loss of identity, nostalgia for home, genuine disconnection, and then eventual reconnection to community. And that would have taken nothing away from the music video-ness of it all. So she comes home to meet a home that is largely unchanged. Let me just tell you something. I know how I feel. I grew up in Calabar, right? We all know what Calabar was, right? Oh my God, we know Calabar, right? That's the Calabar I grew up in. But for the last anything post Donald Duke, honestly, every time I've gone back to Calabar, there is nothing left of Calabar. It's so unfamiliar. And so there's a saying, you never go back, you never return home, you never go back home. Because home is just like they say, you will never cross the same river twice or something like that. Home will change. It can be all the familiar places, whether it's a woman who used to sell akara by the side of the road, whether it's a road that you used to skip puddles in that is now tarred, whether it's a house that was always an uncompleted building and now it's a duplex standing there, whether it's a school that has become a church, whether it's a cultural center that has now become a shopping complex, just so many things. When things change and then it throws you off and gives you just a complete sense of disorientation and like you've lost home. That's how I feel whenever I go back to Calabar. And so now that I live abroad, one thing that I worry about, is even like changes within my own family. Since I've been away, one of my sisters has also moved to another country. And so I'm like, I can never like go back home, because I can't go back to that place with the assumption that she's in her house in Lekki. The next time I see my dad, I don't know who I'll see, because even when I do video calls with him, he doesn't look the same. Things change, if I went back to my former street, if I saw my Megad, will he still be there? Is there somebody new? These are all things that they're powerful, they're small. It doesn't have to be big, massive changes like this movie is trying to take on, like East Side has changed and you can't even see the change. But little things, like instead of having that house be whatever it became, what if the house had become like completely abandoned and just not taken care of? There's a grief there, but there was no effort. So let me come back to this when I say it could have been a story of like genuine disconnection. So she comes home to meet home largely unchanged. Kenan is still a thug. The house is still standing. The community is still there. The people who knew her and them, they're still there. That's she and her brother. She and Kenan, even their feelings are frozen in time, like I've already talked about. By the way, quick question. There's a woman in one of the scenes who is asking her about Mide. Who is that? And it's not even who is that. It doesn't matter. Why? Is that a storyline that they forgot to explore? Like, did they forget that they had that in the movie? Because it felt like that was a piece in a puzzle they were trying to suggest there, that did her brother not really die? Or is there somebody in the community that looks like him that can be confused for him? Are they making a statement on how large the community is, that something as serious as a death of a young boy 10 years ago through violence? Or are they saying she's new in the community? What is the narrative? Why did that scene happen? And so this entire plot is a lot of nothing going nowhere fast. And by fast, I mean this movie also had like super quick edits and cuts that just made scenes, like where scenes could have sat and breathed, there would just be these very quick and abrupt cuts that really took away also from the narration. Let me just say this though, this is Tiwa's first film. I don't want to make it look like this is all just bashing. She's a first time filmmaker, and you guys know on this channel we have a lot of grace for new emerging, upcoming me, I'm going to be one of these days. Would I go pepper me? Try. I feel sorry for myself when I make my movie. Anyway, this is Tiwa's first film and there's a lot of potential here, so she just needs to work on her craft as far as the acting, and then as far as the filmmaking, I think really just commit to filmmaking, starting with a good script, because this movie really could have been everything that it is, meaning, like I said, the music video-ness of it, the extended photography session, all of that, and still have had a solid story under it. So in closing, closing, I'm just going to say, you know, I would have watched this movie to the end regardless because it was vibes and the vibes were good. You know, it was sexy and so on and so on. And that's always a good reason to watch a movie. So also, this is me also reminding myself that as much as I like to say story is king, story is everything, sometimes a movie is just, you know, whatever the filmmaker says it is, which is if they're like, I'm just giving you art, then I guess that's what it is. We take a movie on its own merit. All right, guys, that's it for Water and Garri. Thanks for tuning in. If this video has been of value, please hit that subscribe button below. Please check out my other videos. Of course, I like to hear your thoughts, even the ones that I don't like. So share your comments. Try to be kind to me, please. Also, share my video with your friends and family. Help me go far because I do this really for people to watch the videos. I don't do them to keep them. I really am grateful to you guys. I appreciate you. I cannot guarantee that there'll be a short version of this particular video because I've got so much to do and I'm just completely out of time. If I don't do it in this filming session, I might on a future date, I don't know, or maybe not. Maybe this would just have to be enough. Even if I did give my word that I would try to have the abridged version, abridged or abbreviated version to my videos, but I guess that's not always going to be possible. What do I tell you guys? You have the right to an incredible viewing experience, so never settle. Thank you.